Thank you, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so yeah, Karl Fosburg. I'm with Hughes Network Systems. We are the sole remaining Hughes company left after all the aerospace and all that stuff broke up. So this discussion, opposite of Karl's discussion previous, this is much less technical and a little bit more of our journey of how we're getting there, more in lines with like Felix's discussion and some of the stuff Mark said this morning. So let's get to it. Who are we? We're a managed service provider. We have about 500,000 locations for enterprise customers. We're an ISP, HughesNet, that type of stuff. International, we're literally on every continent, including Antarctica at some point in time. And we, of course, have a big DISD defense industry. Thanks to the veterans in here, you've probably used some of our services in the past. So let's jump to it. A little bit different take. I'm not a network engineer. I dabble in networking quite a bit, of course, as part of our job. We are an MSP after all. And my background is really network management systems, observability, AI ops, that whole flip side of trying to understand what your guys' networks are doing, how our customers are impacted, how they're performing, those type of things. So we'll jump right into it. So once upon a time, 5, 6, 8 years ago, whatever it was, my boss would come into the NMC. We got this huge big screen stuff in our NMC. It looks like NASA kind of. And he's like, why do I walk in here and see just a bunch of red alarms up on the board? I have no clue how our services are doing. All I see is red alarms. This is pointless. So I took that to heart and really started to think about it. And it's taken a long time to think through. We have 30,000 systems and apps and servers. Actually, we're probably closer to 60 data centers now around the country and around the world. 2 million plus clients. At least 10 satellites that we operate over, plus tons and tons of terrestrial networks. Basically, how do you boil down that information mathematically, scientifically, to come up with what I affectionately call the green smiley face board? Because that's really what an executive wants. He walks into the knock ops and just, hey, how's everything going? What's our service doing right now? Are people paying their bills? Are people calling pissed off because their service isn't working? Whatnot. You really want to boil it down, all this information, to just one big smiley face. Hopefully, not a frowny face. So we've grown organically over the years. We've been in business for 50 years, and we're a very long tenured company. A lot of people have worked there for 10, 20, 30 plus years, including myself. I'm still a relatively new guy, and I've been there 20 years. And it's great from a turnover standpoint. You have really good continuity of work and development and operations and everything. The downside of it is, you can always just call that guy if you need information. And you call Teresa. I need to know what NOC operations is doing right now. She knows everything because she's worked there 25 years. And it breeds a little bit, I wouldn't call it laziness, but it certainly just, it makes it easier because everyone just kind of knows what's going on. So what we've had to do, and this is especially true since COVID, where we started to have more turnover. We have people that are remote. We have new hires coming out of college and coming in from other companies. And they're like, well, I don't have all this institutional knowledge. How do I know what the heck is going on in the network, and how do I run this business? So really starting to train the stakeholders to think differently. Think about scale, think about operations, security, knowledge transfer. And to the parents in the room and probably some of the young folks, there was a great book called If You Give a Mouse a Cookie a while ago. And it's a story about, one thing leading to another, and it's a really cute story, but it amplifies really some of the problems. It's like, can you do anything until you've done everything? No, but there is a certain minimum number of things you need to do before you can actually get to network automation. And one of the sayings that I walk around and say all the time in our building to people is computers are stupid. And they don't deal well with unorganized information and non-enumerated information and things, colloquialisms, stuff like that. Humans are great at it, but computers are horrible at it. They just can't piece it together. Maybe with AI, maybe we can in the future, but I consistently walk around telling people how stupid computers are all day long, and how we need to organize data such that you can measure things better, so you can actually get to automation. So where do we start? First thing we wanted to do is let's see if we can boil all this information up, put it in one spot so that we have a single source of truth that we can start and ask questions about our services, our business, the networks that run this business, the applications, service, et cetera, et cetera. And we chose Nautobot. We love all the integrations that it brings. We also, much like Felix was saying earlier, you need to have some quick wins to really present this to your executives, to make sure you have funding and a budget that is consistent. We chose a partner, one of our sponsors, Network Code. We've been working with them for quite a long time. They've been able to come in and really jumpstart the program for us so we can get some quick, easy wins. First and foremost, on the left side, we started with, there's literally spreadsheets on people's desktops. Hey, who do you call when the Albuquerque data center has a problem? Well, I don't know, pull up the spreadsheet and find the phone number and email that person. That's kind of a little odd that you'd have to do that. Or, hey, that circuit, that 100 meg circuit between, or 100 gig circuit between those two data centers, what's the circuit ID and what's the contract for that thing? Oh, I don't know, call Ed. He's got the spreadsheet. It's crazy that you would have important business data stored on people's desktops in a spreadsheet. And there's other examples of this. And the other one is sort of the things in people's brains. It's like you got to get it out of their brain because, they might get hit by the beer truck tomorrow. So get it out of their brain, get it into a system that you can actually track information and then start to relate it. Then we started working on integrations. We're big Infoblox for our IPAM, Science Logic for network management and discovery, VMware, of course, for virtualization. I am going to focus this talk about our on-premise. We have huge amounts of on-premise gear because it needs to sit next to our giant satellite dishes and things like that. It has to be latency-wise extremely close to the RF equipment. So I'm mostly just going to focus on on-premise equipment. And so we'll jump over from there. So what do we start with? We really wanted to start with the easy stuff. Get some big wins, early wins, get it in an Autobot, make a nice interface for people. And we started with, interestingly enough, probably the most complex, seemingly the simplest thing, are our services. So you can't really see it on the board here very well. This is one of the biggest challenges that I faced on day one. You would talk to someone about our consumer service in Brazil. And some people would call it, oh, it's the Brazil NOC service. And other people would call, oh, it's the E65 West service, which is the satellite that traffic goes over. And you talk to 4 people and they have a different name for it. So when you try to relate the infrastructure to the service, it would be very challenging to do it mathematically and programmatically because people called it by different names and they wouldn't apply the right tags to interfaces and servers and applications and things, and it wasn't enumerated data. So first things first, service catalog. Here's all the services. Here's the official name for this service. You can call it whatever you want, but all the computers need to know it by this name and only this name. Someone was mentioning earlier about their mapping table that they had to do because of the lab interfaces not matching the virtual or emulators and stuff like that. I literally have a sign in my office that says no mapping tables because it leads to bad practices. If the system of record, you got to go with it, good or bad. If the customer ID is ABC, but yet you call it XYZ, it's not going to work. People ask all the time, well, just create a mapping table. It's like, no, we're not going to do it. Either go fix the source data or live with this and retrain your brain to use a proper customer ID. So we've gone through, part of this organic growth. We started, 20 years ago, we had like one service, consumer internet over satellite, HughesNet service, and it was really simple, handful of satellites. It really was pretty easy to keep track of that type of stuff. There was maybe 1,000 servers total that made this service run. It's like, piece of cake, right? Now we have, like I mentioned, dozens of satellites that we deal with. 30, 40 different element managers for, be it VeloCloud, Meraki, Cisco, ACI, whatever. We have them all. Fortinet, tons and tons of Fortinet. So we have all of them. We blend it all together. So keeping track of all this information has grown exponentially, but it's been such a slow growth that it wasn't absolutely critical at the time to put a single source of truth into place to keep track of everything and start to relate information properly. So again, we started with the simple stuff, seemingly simple, services. Then, like I said, locations. We have locations around the globe, and keeping track of those locations, being able to relate that information to each other is very important, but not have to go to some guy's spreadsheet for that. Contracts, another seemingly simple thing, stored on someone's spreadsheet. It's like this server or this Cisco piece of gear by serial number is related to this contract, and people would spend time, valuable time for mean time to repair, trying to find the right contract. So they would search through spreadsheets by serial numbers or eventually just call Cisco and say, we got the serial number, what the heck service contract are we? Oh, that expired 6 months ago. Whoops. So these operational efficiencies were really just not efficient. We always have done a great job of service availability, but not super efficiently. So load all the contracts in there, bind this information with service numbers to elements within the single source of truth, and now we can start to actually relate information together. Last one, circuits. Literally, we're bread and butter. These data centers around the world, they're connected with anywhere from 10 to 100 gig circuits that all of our traffic rides over, and they're incredibly important. Previously, we would, again, institutional knowledge, people would know, oh, if this circuit goes down, these services are probably impacted, maybe, but it was, again, humans making that determination, not machines making that determination about cause and impact and things. So now it's all in Nautobot. Just go straight to Nautobot. We know the router A and Z end. We know the data center. So we know, call such and such at data center X to go out and check terminations or whatever, or call CenturyLink up. Here's a circuit ID. We know immediately where they're connected, right down to the physical interfaces. So all this type of information, we're importing it all. It's very, like Mark said earlier, if you don't know what you have, it's very difficult to measure success and automate. So step one, figure out what you have, and then work toward automating pieces of it. You take the low-hanging fruit and start to automate those things and work your way up. And there's no point in going to the hardest thing in your network and trying to automate that, because you're not going to get that quick win. Pick the easy stuff, get quick wins, get visibility with your executives so you can proceed. So that's where we started, static data. Importing it multiple times. We have a dev staging prod stack of Nautobot, so we practice our integrations on our dev stack and blow it up, import it, blow it up, import it. So one of the things we're doing is we're measuring success as we go. The interrelatedness of our data is really critical, knowing right down to the interface, what's connected to what, so we can start to do root cause analysis and correlation right down to the port and interface level, all the way up through the application stack, and which customers are related to that. So eventually, as we tie this into our ITSM, that information will just be automatically populated, so you know when a ticket's being created, customers impacted, where it's at, who to call, all those type of things automatically. It's very important to start to relate this information together. So then, static data was pretty straightforward, easy wins, like I said. Then you start to move forward really with dynamic data. These are, Infoblox IPAM is the system of record for, host-named IPs, the owner group of whoever owns that IP or that server or network equipment. Our Science Logic platform, today and to date, we've always been a discovery organization where, when people install a new network, a new subnet, they call my team up that runs Science Logic platform and says, hey, new subnet, go discover it. Okay, right. Ping sweeps, SNMP sweeps across there, figure out what's there, classify equipment, grab all that information, start monitoring it automatically and stuff, but it's been very discovery focused. So if it doesn't exist in that system, we don't really know about it. And again, going back to the organic growth, you could get away with this for a long time and still have 30,000 servers in your network and operate it very efficiently, but you can't go forever like this. Again, going back to the security guys really pushing us nowadays, we're using their leverage. They have the big stick with executives often, the security group for ransomware protection and things like that. So using their big stick to really help us justify resources and more automation. vCenter, of course, most of us probably run VMware. And of course, our customers come straight out of our CRM system. And again, no mapping tables allowed, customer ID, how we relate that to our infrastructure. Again, this is an example of one of our data centers. Some of these things are literally out in like cornfields in North Dakota and places like that. The requirements are pretty tricky, sunny, dry locations, but with 100 gig, multiple provider 100 gig connections, which is a pretty tricky set of requirements for a facility. But again, there's multiple racks of equipment in these things with hundreds of virtual machines running to provide our services, including to the point that big pod underneath that dish there are actually servers in there even that we have to monitor and keep track of. So as we're importing our IPAM in, we're shifting from making people go into Infoblocks natively to look for information and find things and search. It's a wonderful product, but it's kind of heavyweight for people just to look up an IP address or reserve an IP address. Devices from Science Logic, bring them in, what they do, classified by SNMP, and VMware, of course, and customers. All right, changing gears a little bit. I've talked about kind of why we're working on this and how we're starting and stuff, but switching the gears a little bit. Anyone know what happened on this day? Anyone? Maybe some of the Europeans? No? Okay, good. So on that day, Sweden decided to switch from driving on the left-hand side of the road to the right-hand side of the road in one day, flash cut. So this is an actual picture, chaos ensued, but they did it. But it's painful, but sometimes you gotta go and do something very painful to start your journey forward. I remark a lot at our place that doing something is literally infinitely more than doing nothing. It's just math, right? And you gotta start somewhere. So where we're going in Q1, we will flash cut. I don't know the date yet. We're gonna pick a date. March 1st, maybe? That we're gonna switch gears. No longer are we allowed to put things on the network, go tell the discovery guys, hey, find this thing that we just added, start monitoring it, stuff like that. We switch gears. Now everything becomes prescriptive. You want something in the network? You put it in Nautobot. Nautobot then starts its automation processes to update Infobox, seed it into monitoring platforms, so on. So from that day forward, if it's not an Nautobot, it's not real. It doesn't exist. You'll be slapped upside the head if you go stick stuff on the network without it being there. ACK won't even let you join the network, hopefully. It won't be monitored. The NMC, they won't escalate to you if it breaks. So if you're running some very important application for a customer and it breaks, you can't complain if the NMC, if no alarm was generated and the NMC didn't call you to let you know your very important thing just died. It's just not going to happen. So thankfully, we do have the backing from our executives to make these type of decisions at this point in time. And again, a lot of it is the big security stick that team carries. So yeah, so we switch. That arrow is actually backwards. I'm not a very good slide maker. All right, so we switch from discovery to prescriptive. And this is really where the network automation journey starts. So now we know about everything. We got it all classified. We related it all to each other. And we start the prescriptive program. You start in Nautobot, and you say, I need a new one of these things, or 10 of these, or whatever. I'm sure a lot of you are already doing this type of work. It's, when you're at a larger company, sometimes there's a lot of, there's a lot of history involved, and change is often slow at a larger company. So if you're at a smaller company that's very agile and nimble, good. So start, if you're greenfield in particular, good. You are very fortunate. If you're brownfield, then change is hard. People don't like to change. So now we start with Nautobot in the middle, and that starts to do the automation processes, updates info blocks automatically, seeds it into science logic, pushes configs out to network equipment. And then the other big win that we're putting in place right now is lowering the friction for users to get to this information, start processes, find stuff like that. So one of the things we're putting in place right now, I was hoping it was working today, is the chatbot. So we use Teams. That's our main interface for users to communicate with each other. So now you can go right into Teams, /Nautobot, show device, blah, blah, blah. Bring back all that information right in Teams, so you don't have to go log into anything. So all the integrations that we're doing with Nautobot, with Network to Code's help, you can run right through the chatbot. So again, lowering friction, getting wins early, so that people can find that stuff, and people start talking about it in your business, and they mention it in meetings and things like that. Oh, you don't need to go log in, just type this, and boom, you can see the information. We often, who owns it, where's it at, what customers are impacted if it has a problem, all that type of information now is being related to each other in Nautobot, so even a program manager could probably figure it out through the chatbot. So that's where we're going. We're not going to try to boil the ocean. It's just not practical. We still all have our day jobs on top of our new day job. So everyone, I'm sure, is exactly the same boat in here. So, we stick with the same tools for the most part around the periphery. We use tons of Ansible to do server configs and things like that. We run some Cisco ACI, lots of VMware, Infoblox, Science Logic. So those tools stay in place. Just how we interact with them differs now. Now we can start to seed that information directly through Nautobot and really start there as opposed to end there. Also, I didn't mention, probably just as important or even maybe more important of adding infrastructure into the network is removing it. If most security gaps in most businesses are people running dev boxes, staging, things like that happen to be connected to production networks, and not removing legacy stuff. So you have tech debt, you got to keep track of it. We have tons of it. But removing things from the network, it's a cumbersome process. There's physical parts to it. You got to remove it from each system and things. So it's a tedious, and certain steps sometimes get overlooked and stuff. And those create holes that can be exploited later for whatever nefarious actors. So removing stuff is super important out of there. Starting Nautobot, we will be removing stuff through it. So you got your catalog, we've got all our 30,000 plus things in there. Now you can start that process directly from there. Remove it from Infoblox, remove it from monitoring, remove it from VMware. Keep a history of it, but it's literally removed with the exception of sending tech support down to physically unrack it, unpower it, uncable it, all that type of stuff. So that's really a critical piece that is part of our day one manifesto to get done is removal. Okay, I think I'm ahead of schedule a little bit. Good. Right. So some of the other features that we're planning on taking advantage of, and we don't even actually need to be in full automation phases to get several of these features out of the box. Config compliance, again, running Cisco or whatever configs against a compliance matrix from the vendor or from third parties to say, hey, you got some stuff in here that's really not in compliance with your standard policies. And my favorite one, personally, being the monitoring guy, so to speak, is config diff alerting. So, I mean, any of us who work in operations, first question, hey, there's a bunch of red alarms for this thing over here and the service just went belly up. Who changed something? Usually the first question everyone asks. It's, statistically, more than half of failures are caused by people making changes. So we support a lot of retail customers and consumers, so we lock ourselves down from Thanksgiving through Christmas and New Year's, just because we don't want people making changes that break things. Unfortunately, people do make changes still, outside of proper change window, change controls, things like that. So the ability to do config diffing and alert me when something changes. That one's near and dear to me because it often dovetails directly into an actual outage caused by a human making an unauthorized change. So the other one that's lots of people are happy about, firewall and ACL policy analysis. So most of you guys are network engineers. I don't know how many of you also deal with your firewall and security apparatus in a traditional environment, but that's often a challenging interface, to say the least. Understanding, what ACLs are in place for server A to talk to server Z often involves many, many hops, and understanding those policies that sit in between there, preventing your critical application from working, is hard to figure out. So we're loading. We run mostly Fortinet, good or bad, we run mostly Fortinet. So bringing all those configurations into Nautobot and having it sift through and try to genericize, if that's a word, policies and things so we can actually understand and have a sporting chance of understanding sort of an end-to-end policy down to the port level for how systems talk to each other. I mentioned the Teams chatbot interface, and then lastly, circuit maintenance. Another feature that we're really looking forward to is when providers send us an email, typically it's an email, that says, hey, circuit ID 123, we're doing maintenance on it at 2 a.m. Saturday night. So today those kind of go into a generic inbox. Hopefully someone from NOC operations looks at that and actually does something with it so that when we get the red alarm that says, circuit 123 just went down at 2 a.m., they don't call everyone. They actually go, oh, I got an email about this. So we can actually connect up the email gateway directly to Nautobot to have it auto-parse. Most of those are very well-structured emails, including the circuit ID, so we can actually take that right into Nautobot and see that there's going to be maintenance on it and tie that in. As an event comes up, have it query Nautobot directly through its API and say, oh, they're doing maintenance on it. So we don't wake everyone up in the middle of the night for some something that a provider is doing on purpose. And lastly, so I'm ahead of time a little bit, why are we doing this? Again, like Mark said this morning, if you don't know about stuff, it's very difficult to automate it. So as we move forward, understanding, building our single source of truth, it pays really a lot of dividends for it. And as we switch to that prescriptive methodology, as we start to automate things, now we actually know about stuff. So single source of truth is critical. All data enrichment comes from your single source of truth. So as we gather metrics and observability data or log data, we enrich it with this source of data, good or bad, right or wrong. It is the single source of data. If it's wrong, go to the system of record and fix it. And don't do something in between, and don't run your own silo operation with your own data. There is no such thing at this point in time and day and age. So again, all of our enrichment uses this as the source of data for that enrichment. So that drives things like machine learning and AI ops. People love shiny orbs, right? They're like, oh, get some AI ops, get some ML. And it's like an iceberg. To get the tip of the iceberg and spit out a really cool answer using machine learning and things like that actually takes good data. If you feed it crap data that's enriched incorrectly, then you're going to get mysterious results. And the part of the iceberg that's under the water is really where all the work is. You know, doing proper data enrichment and ETL and things like that, such that the shiny orb at the top is polished and good looking. So again, organizing your data for that source of enrichment is critical. Observability. Lastly, we have lots of customers. That's why I'm still getting paid. And how those customers relate and how things are impacted to our infrastructure is really important. So knowing customers impacted at a snap of a finger is really important, and we build interfaces and give them portals and things like that to look at, plus escalation policies and whatnot. So as we automate those, many of them are automated already. More and more of them will be automated as we expand out our single source of truth. And SecOps, again, mentioning SecOps because they, like I said, they carry the big stick often. So use them to your advantage because they're the ones often getting the budget nowadays. So leverage that and also, again, it's the source of enrichment for all of our logs going to Splunk or Elastic or whatever. We enrich it with this data in particular. So that's it. Yes, so again, that's what we're trying to achieve ultimately as our service goal, and boiling down millions and millions of metrics and objects and petabytes of data to hopefully come up with a smiley face, scientifically, mathematically, is where we're going. So I'll open up to questions.
When people bring up Nautobot, other than like the Decepticons, a lot of people think of NetBox. A lot of people are weighing up the two things. We personally, like in our stack, we use NetBox and enjoy it. We've got people in the team who contribute to it. So I was just kind of looking for maybe a bit of cheeky transparency or something, like why you guys decided to go with that, or whether you weighed up the two, or whether,
Sure. No, this was a probable question. Yeah, they're extremely similar tooling. The scope of integrations that were out of the box were very, very useful. Working with networked code in particular, that's their system of choice, and so working with them has really driven us to that decision also. The sheer number of out of the box integrations and things is pretty extensive. It's you can't go wrong with either one type of answer. We chose Nautobot. Really, I'm not trying to make the single source of truth purely just for network stuff. As I mentioned earlier, really getting those sort of logical things captured of locations and the way we relate information to services and things like that. That's sort of another driver. It's maybe slightly more generic than NetBox. Probably not a great answer, but that's kind of where we ended up. Like I said, they're both awesome. And amazing that we have open source tools available to us in this day and age that are better than pretty much anything you can get commercially. So, question in the back?
How is getting upper-level management to buy in and invest in that?
Yeah, good question. Really good question. Much like Felix answered this morning regarding, if you just go in from a pure dollar play, it's not going to work. I mean, it's like buying insurance, right? There's no value add to buying insurance until you really need it. And, as we pitch this to our executives saying, how is it that we're, a multi-billion-dollar company that we don't have a single source of truth that I can just dump information out of when someone comes and asks for it. We've done it in pockets. in different silos, you know, the consumer business, the enterprise business, the international. People have done it in pockets, but really to roll it all up into a single source of truth has been the challenge. And again, we leveraged a little bit what the security folks were doing. They literally came to us and said, hey, we got this big ransomware study and we're paying these expensive, you know, consultants to do all this analysis. And you know, the fact that we're like, well, we'll dump you data out of this system and this system and this system, and you guys piece it together as part of your plan, that's a kind of an embarrassing answer, to tell you the truth. So, you know, being able to present that to our executives, it's like, I mean, you know, it's time to grow up. We gotta do this stuff correct. You know, we've just grown organically for so long that it was, you know, somewhat glossed over and allowed to happen. So, you know, now we're putting our foot down and saying, you know, we just have to do this. We can't not do it anymore. So it has taken a while, and we have had to roll it a little slower than we would have liked. And again, trying to get some quick wins is helping that. It's, you know, instead of it being a 3-month project with a ton of resources put to it, you know, it's going to be a 1-year project with a quarter of the number of resources that we would prefer to do it. So, I mean, it is what it is. You know, we all have budgets that we have to live with.
Yeah, I think we got one more down the front here. Oh, Deepak, it's you. Let me come all the way around.
Okay, we'll go you next.
Let me go here first.
This is kind of a two-part question. There should be hopefully a simple answer for both. As you went into your single source of truth journey, what did you run across that you thought was going to be easier that turned out to be extraordinarily difficult? And then on the converse, what ended up you thought was going to be extraordinarily difficult but was far easier to achieve?
That's a good question. Contracts has turned out to be a lot more difficult than anticipated, because, you know, if you think of it like a relational database where you need to join records together, the contracts, how we get them from our vendors, are not well formatted, if you will, to allowing just a simple import and do a join record on them. So it's been significantly more difficult. The import was a piece of cake. That part was fine because they were being stored in spreadsheets. But then relating it to infrastructure and other devices, or to, you know, things in the network, if you will, has proven to be challenging, just because of the format of the data being so grossly different from each other. And, you know, some use serial numbers, some use, you know, service tags. You know, so that's been a challenge. Things that turned out to be easier so far, the progress we've made on config compliance. So as we're, you know, importing all of our, you know, route switch gear or ACI, and doing config compliance against, you know, golden standards and type of stuff has actually progressed quite quickly, which I was actually pretty surprised about. We're starting, you know, it's still POC, but we're already starting to see results on the subsets that we've already brought in. So that's turned out to, it's not easy, but out of the box, we've already seen benefits day one on that.
You know, this question has crossed my mind several times. Since you guys use a fork of NetBot, right? That's what Nautobot works. How do you guys plan on being such a big provider, keeping up with all the updates and security vulnerability that are coming your way? Because, you know,
no, it's a good question. We addressed that very, very early on with Network to Code as our partner on this. So we've made very conscious decisions about trying to stay in the open source framework. You know, so everything is config driven at this point in time. And then if we need any custom development that would potentially break on the next upgrade, then you know, we're specifically trying to avoid it, first of all. And then we're working with them to say, does this benefit the open source community? For example, the Science Logic integration that we're doing, they're probably going to end up open sourcing it. Says there's other people that run the platform, so they might as well open source. So then it'll roll into the GA version of Nautobot, so we're safe at that point in time because we've got all the contributors and and support support behind that to prevent that. So we're specifically trying to avoid branching off at a code level with any. So the plugin nature of how Nautobot is built, if you follow the standards, you should be upgrade compliant when you go to the next version. And that's the goal here. We're definitely trying not to stray off from the released GA path there. So far so good. We don't think we've developed any integrations that won't survive an upgrade. Yeah.
I understand the concept of plugins, right?
Yeah.
But
well,
the
like
thing is, when something is forked, right? When the train changes or the major release or GA changes,
sure.
How would you do it? But in terms of it's a large environment that you said.
Yeah.
So many data centers and everything. How do you ensure that?
So we do have a dev staging prod instance of Nautobot. Staging and prod are built identical. Staging is lower level. And we connect to representative systems for every integration that we have. So we specifically have dev and staging such that we can test the upgrades before ever going to prod. So traditional, dev stage prod progression of the platform itself and all the integrations that sit behind it. So, knock on wood, we should be good to go on it. Yep, no problem.
All right, that's all we've got time for. Let's get a big round of applause for Karl.